Hello everyone, this is part 3 of What If Naruto Joined the Teen Ants, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. The air wiped at her face as she sat on the roof. Raven knew he was behind her. He had been for several minutes. She hadn't heard him, he was much too silent for that. But she had sensed him the moment he had stepped foot on the stairs to the roof. How do you control it? Raven asked quietly. Naruto knew she was talking about H.I.V.E. I don't. It just stays in control on its own. When I'm angry or hurt, he might pull through for seconds, minutes, even hours at a time. But other than that, he's nothing more than another mind and power within my body. There isn't much to control. Wider ask. Raven took a deep sigh. I have to spend 3 hours a day in meditation just to make sure I don't blow up the house in my sleep. Do you know what that's like? Raven stood up and turned to him. The wind whipped at both of their clothes and hair. The moonlight struck Naruto brilliantly, illuminating his face. I can't feel. Raven said almost sadly. Not a single thing. Not anger, not love, not happiness, not sadness, nothing. If I do, I threaten the lives of those around me. And strangely, it's only now that I feel even the slightest thing. And what's that? Naruto asked. Loneliness, she said. She turned her head as she said it and looked into his eyes. The Ants are my friends and family. But I have never known happiness. Never. Suddenly a very sad look came over Raven's face, as if a very painful thought crept into her mind. She began. Raven looked into Naruto's eyes and gathered her courage. I came my own mother. Did you know that? Naruto was shocked. I didn't know what I was doing. I don't even know what I was thinking at the time. I just K her. And I cried afterwards. I brought the entire building down because I cried. Do you know what it's like to live with this, and never allow yourself to be controlled by it? Naruto couldn't answer, even if he wanted to he wouldn't have, he got the feeling he wasn't meant to answer. Naruto walked slowly up to her and before she could stop him, he hugged her. He embraced her and held her tight. Raven tried to push away but she felt a resistance within her own body. Soon she gave up fighting and just pressed herself as close to him as she could. They stayed like that for what seemed to be hours, but in reality it was only a few minutes. Thank you, Raven said quietly. Then she sank into the floor and left Naruto standing there in the wind. Where is friend Naruto? Starfire asked Raven when she saw her come through the ceiling. He's on the roof, Raven answered before looking in the fridge. How would you know? Beast Boy asked, making little effort to control the snide tone of his voice. Cyborg popped his head up from behind the kitchen counter with a large watermelon in his hands. Because she was just up there being all lovey-dovey with her boyfriend. He laughed. He puckered up his lips in a mocking expression of K. Raven was seething with rage. The watermelon that Cyborg was holding exploded and sent a very large mess everywhere. Especially over Cyborg's face. Shut up, Raven screamed. Leave her alone, Cy. Beast Boy said, taking a bite out of his tofu. Cyborg stared at him with a melon-covered face. He grabbed Beast Boy and thrust him against a wall. Who? He demanded. Beast Boy was terrified. Dude, get off of me. He changed into a gorilla and gripped Cyborg's arms. With his animalistic strength he forced Cyborg onto his knees and then threw him across the room. He changed back. It's me, Beast Boy said, panting. I just think you should lay off her a bit. So what if she likes Naruto? Is it really our place to make her feel uncomfortable about it? He glared at Cyborg before his features softened. Just leave her alone. Beast Boy walked off to his room. Cyborg stood there for a moment before he began to follow his friend out the door. Beast Boy sat on his bed thinking about everything that had been going on. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts and forced him to open the door. Hey dude, Cyborg said kindly. You wanna talk? Beast Boy turned his back and walked back over to his bed. He sat on it. No, he said. Well, how about you just listen? Cyborg recommended. What's wrong with you, man? You've been totally different over the past week. You barely eat. You're always angry. And don't even get me started on how easy I beat your butt on the game. Cyborg said, grinning. Hey, I almost beat you on that third track we did. Beast Boy interjected. See, that's the Beast Boy I know and like. What I don't like is who you've been lately. Talk to me, man. Cyborg pleaded. You like her, don't you? Beast Boy nodded. And now Naruto's getting in the way. Cyborg surmised. What way? Beast Boy exclaimed. There is no way. I mean, she doesn't even like me. Cyborg suddenly began grinning. What are you grinning at? Beast Boy asked offensively. Remember when me and you went into her mind and found out about her father? He smiled. Yeah, there were all those different personalities of Raven, right? They were different, but still the same. They liked the same things, hated the same things, thought the same things, but... Dude, I know. Just tell me already. Do you remember what the pink one said when you made a joke? Cyborg asked. Beast Boy thought for a moment. No, can't say I do. She said that she had always found you funny. Beast Boy perked up a little. It was still her BB. She finds you funny. She likes you. Maybe not in the way that you like her, but as long as she doesn't hate you. There's hope. Beast Boy smiled. Thanks, man. Suddenly the tower alarm sounded throughout the building. It was Johnny Rancid. He was back and holding 2 nuns hostage at the convent. Apparently it was to challenge Robin. Beast Boy looked up at the screen in the living room with a look of confusion on his face. Is it just me or has this week been like, really busy? He asked. I mean, first there's Cinderblock and Slade, then there's K-Moth, H.I.V.E. and Brother, and now Johnny freaking Rancid. When will it end? Beast Boy exclaimed loudly. We'll worry about that later. Robin said, running out the door. The other ants followed. Come on, Robin. I know you're out there. Johnny Rancid shouted out into the playground. He fired off a few rounds of his pistol into the air. Give it up, Rancid. Robin said from behind the villain. Johnny Rancid turned around slowly with an evil grin on his face. You can't beat me this time, Robin. He said, holding up his right arm. I've had some improvements done. Suddenly Johnny Rancid's arm opened up and turned into a large gun. The 2 nuns at his feet whimpered at the sight of the weapon. Johnny fired at Robin with limited accuracy. Robin dodged out of the way, jumped up into the air and threw a smoke disc at him. It exploded in a large puff of smoke. Johnny coughed in the gas. Robin leapt into the air and Johnny around the head with his pole. Johnny fell to the ground but got to his feet quickly afterwards. Johnny held up his robotic arm again and fired a missile at Robin. Robin tried to dodge but the missile followed him and struck the ground at his feet. Robin flew back, dazed and hurting. The sound of Johnny's laughter filled his head. You're pathetic, Johnny said evilly. And you're definitely stupid. Did you really think you could take me alone? Yeah, I thought I could. But just in case I couldn't, I brought company. Robin said on the floor with a grin. Suddenly a sonic blast hit Johnny in the back and sent him sprawling to the ground. Smoke came off of him in wisps. Johnny dived out of the way of another blast and fired another missile. This time at the other ants. The explosion knocked Beast Boy down and blocked the other's vision due to dust and smoke. This gave Johnny enough time to reach his bike. He got on the bike, activated the engine, and sped off quickly. Get back here, Robin said angrily. Robin pressed a single button on his belt and within seconds his bike was beside him. He got on, turned the engine on and sped off after Johnny. Hey, dude, wait up, Beast Boy called after his friend, but Robin didn't hear. The young teen was already speeding away. Dude, he left us, Beast Boy exclaimed. Just help me with this, Cyborg said, unwrapping the ropes from the nuns' hands. He set them free and thanked them all for their help. The nuns ran away as fast as they could. I'm gonna call the T-car. Cyborg opened up a panel on his arm and pressed a single button. The T-car was there in moments. It sped up to them and stopped skillfully with a skid. They all began to get in, but Cyborg noticed something. Naruto wasn't here. Hey, where'd Naruto go? He asked, looking around. He must have gone after Robin, come on. Cyborg ordered. He got in the car and sped off after Robin. They were just ahead. Naruto could see them clearly. He skipped across the roofs with effortless ease. His footing was perfect. The 2 bikes sped off round a corner away from Naruto's position. Naruto braced himself and leapt from the building. He crossed the entire gap in the streets. He flew across the road and landed on the building opposite easily. He rolled on the roof from the impact but was up and running instantly. Naruto slowly began to gain on his target. He knew Robin would never catch Johnny in time, and if he did, it would take a good couple of hours. They turned a corner in front of him. Perfect. Naruto jumped off the building. In moments 2 kunai were in his hands. He threw them with pinpoint accuracy. They struck the wheels of Johnny's bike, causing him to skid and fall off the bike with a roll. He was unconscious. Naruto landed in a crouched position. Robin skidded to a halt beside him and looked at Naruto angrily. Why did you do that? Robin yelled. I had him. Robin stormed off in the other direction, leaving Naruto feeling very confused. The T-car pulled up shortly and Naruto looked to Cyborg for an answer into Robin's behavior. Yeah. Cyborg began with a hand tucked behind his head. Robin's a complex sort-o guy. You kinda interrupted his bike ride. Robin likes to do things himself, and he gets a little angry when people butt in. Even if they're only trying to help. Well, that's the definition of teamwork, and I think Robin needs to understand that or we might have a problem. Naruto said darkly. Hey, don't go picking a fight now. Cyborg warned. Hey, I just helped him. And what do I get? He screamed in my face and said I shouldn't have interfered. If that's the way he's gonna treat me, then he better not be counting on my help with this H.I.V.E. thing. Hey, come on. Beast Boy said. Don't do that. Robin's just one of those guys. Yeah, no. No, I don't know. Where I come from, when someone helps you out, you say, thank you. Now he either apologizes to me for shouting and then says, thank you, for me helping him, or I leave. Naruto warned. Okay, let me go talk to him. Cyborg said understandingly. Cyborg walked over to Robin, who was currently placing an unconscious Johnny Rancid in cuffs. He was there for only a few minutes before he escorted Robin over to Naruto. Now what do you have to say? Cyborg said, grinning and speaking as though he were talking to a child. Robin did not look pleased with this at all. I'm sorry, he mumbled with a scowl. And, Cyborg urged. Robin muttered something quietly. I didn't hear you, Cyborg said. Robin brought his elbow back into Cyborg's ribs, sending the mechanical man to the floor. Thank you for helping me, Robin said reluctantly. You're welcome, Naruto said, smiling. Before any of them could speak again, they heard a strange sound from behind them. They spun round in defensive stances, ready for a battle. But they were not ready for what they saw. Hundreds of fangirls were running at them, screaming at the top of their lungs. Beast Boy was up front in a flash. Finally, they love me. Come to me, girls. The girls ran straight through him, trampling him to the floor. They all pounced on Naruto at once. Naruto tried to make a bunchen double, but the girls were too fast. They drove him to the ground, screaming his name over and over again. They began tearing at his clothes and giggling humorously. In a single moment he was down to nothing but his blue boxes, his headband and the necklace that he had fought hard to keep from the girls. Beast Boy would have laughed like crazy if he had have seen the small frog on Naruto's underwear. But he was currently too caught up in shouting his rage to the world at his bad luck with women. Naruto found himself in an embarrassing predicament. He tried to cover up as best he could and the others tried to look away. Raven especially, though thankfully no one noticed her furious blush. Is this a strange human ritual I have not seen before? Starfire asked curiously. Should we all partake in the removal of our clothes? No, the others shouted together. Then what, pray tell, is going on? She asked. Why is it I have such luck with women in this world, but not in my own? Naruto whined. Must be one of those laws of physics thingies. Cyborg said, scratching his chin. Could we go home now? Naruto asked shyly. They arrived at the T-Tower quickly and the first thing Naruto did was run to his room to get some privacy. Robin, Cyborg asked. Do you have any spare clothes for him? I have some civilian clothes in my dresser. I doubt I've ever wore them. Robin went and gathered the clothes and walked to Naruto's room. He knocked 3 times. Yeah, Naruto said shyly. Here, you can borrow some of my clothes. It's not a duplicate of your costume, is it? Because I'd rather walk through town than wear that. Robin was stunned. What's wrong with my costume? Robin screamed. He began beating on the door in rage, screaming and shouting at Naruto inside. Will those two ever get on? Cyborg said, shaking his head. Robin contacted the rest of the ants and requested an audience within the living room. Naruto was currently dressed in a pair of light jeans that were very uncomfortable for him, seeing as he wasn't used to them, and a black top. Robin looked at the others and said plainly, "We need some equipment for Naruto." "What kind of equipment?" Cyborg asked. Raven walked into the room briskly and joined the others. "He'll need a suit of armor that will be strong, light and flexible for his movements. A blade of some kind will work, and you'll need to dye his hair and change his kunai to shurikens to avoid being recognized," she said. The others stared. "Okay," Cyborg said slowly. Starfire perked up. "I do not know of armor or the K of the hair, but I may be of some help with a blade. A sword, actually." The group, including Raven, looked at her wide-eyed. "You have a sword?" Robin asked skeptically. "It is a ceremonial one. But yes, I have a sword." Starfire led him to her room. She began to throw things about her room in an attempt to get to a large wooden trunk at the back of her closet. She easily took it out with one hand and handed to Beast Boy, saying, "Hold this please." The trunk rushed to the floor with Beast Boy's hands underneath it. He yelled in pain as his fingers were squashed into the floor due to the trunk's weight. "I am terribly sorry, friend Beast Boy," she said, as she quickly grabbed the trunk and placed it on the bed. She placed her head back in the cupboard and retrieved a key. She opened the trunk and began rummaging around, throwing things left, right, and center until the room was a thorough mess. She brought out a large case and undid it. Inside was the most beautiful and strange-looking blade any of them had ever seen. The blade was made of a gray metal that none of the other ants had ever seen before. The handle was long and gray like the rest of the blade. The blade itself was very peculiar. It was, well, the only way to describe it is to say, imagine a flame with a hollow center. Within the center there is a spike, and the outside of the blade itself comes to a very sharp point. It was large, but light. Swift but elegant. Peculiar, but strangely menacing. It was perfect. She handed to Naruto. Naruto swung the blade experimentally and found it surprisingly light, and, as he see through a part of Starfire's bed by accident, very sharp. "Perfect," Naruto said. Cyborg was inside his room and working on Naruto's armor. He was installing cybernetics to allow for increased speed and strength. He also inputted some spy equipment and listening devices. Soon the armor was done and they moved on to the next task. Then they set Naruto dyeing his hair into pure white and replaced his kunai with shurikens. Naruto stood in the living room before the others. The overall effect was amazing. There, in the middle of the room, Naruto was no longer Naruto. He was a boy with pure white hair, half his face covered with a fabric mask. Black and gray Hayabusa armor with spikes over the left shoulder blade and right elbow. His headband looked exactly the same, but it bore a different symbol, and beneath its metal plating there was circuitry and electronics. These were inbuilt cameras and audio devices for Naruto to use. Shurikens were tucked in his belt and his boots were firm and powerful. The giant blade that Starfire had given him, the ceremonial Tishma, as Starfire called it, was currently strapped to his back. Overall, he was no longer Naruto, he was Shadow. Raven looked him over. "I preferred you before," she said quietly. Cyborg looked horrified. "We dress him up in dark colors and make him look like seriously scary, and you don't like it?" he said, raising both eyebrows. "Leave me alone," she grumbled. "Glorious. I can hardly recognize you, friend Naruto," Starfire said, clapping and jumping up and down on the spot. "There's no time to waste." Robin began. "Naruto, are you ready?" Naruto nodded. "Good. Now here's the plan," Robin said with a grin. Naruto was walking toward the H.I.V.E. training facility. He knew he was being watched. The attack happened quickly, but not quickly enough. Jinx dived off of a nearby roof and sent purple bolts at the stranger below her. Before she could react, the boy had leapt at a nearby fence, effectively dodging her bolts. From there he kicked off, grabbed her around the end, span in the air with her, and landed them both on their feet on the ground with him holding her tightly with a blade held against her teeth. She was shocked. Jinx managed to crane her in and get a look at her assailant. She felt she recognized him from somewhere. "Have I seen you before?" she said darkly, consciously aware of the blade against her teeth. Naruto looked at her with a fierce gaze. If you had, he began in a hoarse voice, you'd be S. He let her go with a spin, kicking her in the stomach, sending her flying back onto the ground. He approached her heavily. I have heard much about you, Jinx. And that of the H.I.V.E. as well. I wish to join, said Naruto, making a conscious effort to conceal his voice. Jinx looked at him with suspicion. Follow me, she said simply. She got to her feet and made him follow her. So what's your name? Jinx asked as they walked. Do not ask questions you don't need the answer to, nor expect me to give, he said darkly. Naruto knew he would never have said anything like that before, but he had allowed Kyuubi to transfer some of his energy into his body. This made him a little more impulsive and more convincing. After all, if he kept his normal personality, he would surely be found out in an instant. Geez, it was only a question. What's your deal? Jinx asked, walking backwards to face him. My deal is this, I don't like nosy little girls that ask confidential questions. I'm here to join the H.I.V.E., not make friends. Jinx stopped suddenly and glared at him. Well, I am an original member of the H.I.V.E. and I guarantee you, you won't be joining unless you give us a name, she said sternly. As you wish, but know that it is not my true name. I am known simply as Shadow. You may call me as so and by no other name. Were you to call me by a different name, you will be scraping around on the floor looking for your own heart. You really are morbid, aren't you? Jinx protested. Just lead me, Naruto said impatiently. Fine, she exclaimed. They both walked for another hour or so. Pretty soon they arrived at a small alleyway. Jinx took out one of the bricks and pressed her hand on a scanner. The wall opened up to reveal a staircase going down. Naruto would have been shocked to see such a thing, but he had been here long enough to cease being amazed by the technology. He followed her down the stairs. The steps themselves were gray stone and the walls were made of golden hexagonal shapes, probably to give the theme of a beehive. Naruto stayed silent the whole way. He did not move his head much to look around, he was trying to stay as much in character as possible. Soon they arrived at a long and wide corridor, not unlike the kind at the bottom of the stairs at a subway station. There was a machine that Naruto had never seen before. It was made of metal and had an arch like a door. It's a form of metal detector. Walk through here please, Jinx asked. Why? What does this device do? Naruto asked. It takes an X-ray and allows us to see what you're carrying. We can't exactly let you in if you, say, have a bomb, she said with a grin. Naruto walked up to the archway. Nice and calmly he jumped over the top and carried on walking. Hey, you're meant to go through it, Jinx shouted at him. My personal effects are none of your business, and I do not take kindly to being forced to reveal them. He turned his back on her and began to walk. Suddenly he was struck over the back by something and he fell to the floor due to off balance. Thankfully, the armor made the blow none painful. Jinx walked around to the front of him wielding a large iron pole in her hands. You're gonna walk through the X-ray whether you like it or not, she said with a sneer. Naruto picked himself up and casually brushed himself off. Now, move, Jinx ordered. Naruto finished brushing himself off and looked at her casually. He edged his head to side and said, no. Jinx was infuriated. Then I'll make you, she shouted. Jinx swung the pole rapidly in all directions. Naruto ducked and dodged effortlessly. When Jinx made to hit him down on his head, Naruto clapped his hands over the pole and held it barely an inch from himself. No matter how hard Jinx tried, she couldn't budge the pole. Naruto put some chakra into the metal of the pole and twisted. The pole snapped in half. Jinx gawked at him. Naruto kicked. Mammoth had stolen a device from Gizmo and the big brute refused to give it back. Give it back, you stinkin' furball, he shouted, trying to reach it by jumping. Suddenly a loud crash erupted within the large room. Everyone's attention turned towards the large double doors. They burst open with huge force and Jinx came flying through and crashed onto the ground unconscious. Naruto walked through the large doors calmly and stood staring down at Jinx's unconscious form. Mammoth growled in anger and charged at the stranger. Naruto felt the vibrations and heard the sounds of the large beast approaching easily. At just the right time, he stepped back and raised a single foot. Mammoth tripped and flew across the room into a load of tables. Naruto looked around him calmly. His reactions and strength were greatly increased due to H.I.V.E's energy, otherwise he would never have been able to do such things so easily. The room he was in was a giant one. It had grey stone floors and orange hexagonal walls. The roof was domed high above him. He was about to take in the rest of the details when his company attacked. The room was full of people. They were of all shapes and sizes, but all obviously angry at his intrusion. He didn't bother to gather a profile of anyone. He didn't have time. The first opponent came up and grabbed him from behind. The being began to crush him in his arms. Naruto swung his legs down and used the momentum to flip the large being over his back. He quickly backflipped to avoid a large blast from some kind of weapon and threw a single shuriken in the direction it came from. The shuriken lodged itself in the person's weapon and overloaded. The gun exploded, sending the individual flying back against a wall. Opponents attacked from all angles. Naruto used his newfound speed to dodge and counter all attacks. Not a single hand, paw or claw found its mark upon him. Soon the ground littered with unconscious individuals. He did not kill them. He didn't want to seem completely hostile. Although, despite his greater speed and skill, Naruto soon found himself overwhelmed against the numbers of individuals. Naruto rapidly dodged out of the way of several attacks and created at least 10 Bunshin doubles. The crowd watched in shock. Naruto used this to his advantage. Him and his clones attacked simultaneously and rapidly his opponents were defeated. Others ran away to the corners of the room while those conscious on the floor groaned in pain. A whirring sound met Naruto's ears. Naruto turned around. A large circular disc was descending from the center of the roof, seemingly floating on nothing. The occupancy of this disc was standing patiently. Slade stood there. Naruto recognized him instantly. Naruto had never seen the girl that stood beside him, but he knew her immediately. She was Blackfire. She was Starfire's sister and a mean piece of work. Naruto knew who she was from Beast Boy, who had taken it upon himself to constantly narrate all the An's adventures of the past. Blackfire had dark purple hair and a very similar face to Starfire's, but she had purple eyes and wore dark and light purple clothing, much the same as Starfire's bright ones. She looked menacing. The circular dish finally reached the ground where Slade and Blackfire stared at Naruto. Slade turned to Blackfire casually. "Deal with him," he said. Blackfire looked at him and smiled evilly. "With pleasure," she said. She jumped into the air and flew at Naruto quickly. She sent several of her star bolts at Naruto with accuracy. Unlike Starfire's green bolts, Blackfire's were purple. Naruto held up his arms and crossed them to shield him. The bolts erupted against him, sending him flying back into the air. He backflipped and landed on the floor with a skid. Naruto quickly retrieved 2 shurikens from his belt and threw them quickly at Blackfire. Blackfire fired 2 bolts. Each found their targets on the shurikens. The throwing stars were vaporized in the energy. Blackfire flew at Naruto and had him at the T in a second. Suddenly she felt the cold point of a blade pressed to the back of her N. The Naruto in her grasp looked at her hard and disappeared in a puff of smoke. She turned her head slightly and saw at the corner of her eye, yet another Naruto holding a giant blade to the back of her N. Not just any blade, a ceremonial tishma. The ceremonial tishma was awarded to the Tamaranians at the age of 14. How Naruto managed to retain one was beyond her. They weren't even made for combat, but then again, the strength of the metal was meant to withstand Tamaranian's strength. In the hands of a being without such strength, it would be more than capable of withstanding a collision with another blade. Blackfire was intrigued, and greatly angry. She spun around and kicked at the blade. It was quickly retracted away, effectively evading the blow. Naruto thrust the blade forward quickly again and placed the tip against her T. Blackfire quickly flew backwards and into the air. She stopped above him and began trying to kick and punch him in any area of his body that she had access to. But each time she attacked, he dodged and placed the blade at a fatal point. She got angry and her eyes gray bright purple. Giant blasts flew from her pupils. Her vision was momentarily blurry as the blasts erupted from her retinas. Naruto used this. He dodged to the side, rapidly charged up a Rasengan. Thanks to the aid of H.I.V.E, he barely needed to gather chakra at all, and thrust it against her back. Blackfire screamed in pain and flew across the room and into a wall, knocking her unconscious. The back of Blackfire's clothes was torn where the Rasengan had struck her. and blemishes littered her back and some scrapes would be a subtle crimson flow. Naruto exited his defensive stance and stood proud as Slade walked up to him himself. Slade stopped right next Naruto and leaned in. Their faces almost touched. Slade looked deep into Naruto's hard eyes. The young ninja began gathering his chakra, preparing for Manta attack. But instead of attacking, he began chuckling. Slade was actually chuckling. Soon his chuckles turned to laughter. But Naruto noticed a strange thing. Slade was not laughing at him, he was laughing with him. Slade's laughter eased down rapidly. He stared at Naruto sternly before saying, "I like you." Slade walked past Naruto and patted the boy on the shoulders. Naruto was in the H.I.V.E. The H.I.V.E. base was far bigger than Naruto could have fathomed. The area was split into 5 sections. The center section, the hall, was the largest. The surrounding 4 sections were the housing for dormitories or training grounds. The entire complex was apparently a giant dome. The days there were spent in solitude. Naruto chose it that way. He would enter the hall, sit in the very center, and meditate. Well, he would pretend to meditate. What he was really doing was allowing the teen ants to gather intel. The hall served many purposes. Usually it would be the general social room where the other members of H.I.V.E. would go to generally hang out. Other times it was a gathering place for large discussions and speeches. It also served as the largest of the training areas. When in training mode it had many defenses to defeat and could be quite the challenge. Currently it was being used to socialize. Naruto didn't know much about the people there, he generally kept to himself. He didn't want to make friends. After all, these people were criminals. Often, however, they would try and talk to him. They would taunt him, try to get a rise. But he would merely continue his meditation and ignore them. His suit and headband were full of circuitry and all sorts of other things. As long as the systems were active, the ants had complete visual, auditory, and apparently thermal information. What any of those meant, Naruto had no clue. But he figured they were important. Naruto had been there the space of 3 days already. And nothing had really happened. He was constantly watched by Jinx. Though Naruto got the feeling this was for other reasons than to merely keep an eye on him. He came to this conclusion when he caught Jinx's eye when she had been staring at him. She would look away and blush. Naruto was currently meditating. After about 5 minutes he sensed someone approaching. He didn't open his eyes to look at her, for he knew it was Blackfire. "What do you want?" Naruto asked. Blackfire looked at him sheepishly. She had a large bruise on her face and her back ached tremendously from their battle. "Well," she began. "Spit it out." Naruto growled, taking a sharp and angry look at her. Blackfire took a light step backwards. "I want to know you," she said quickly. Naruto's face softened for a moment before turning back to its original glare. "What do you mean?" Naruto asked in a hoarse growl. Blackfire sat down next to him and hugged her knees to her. "See? Don't you know?" she asked him quizzically. Naruto huffed. "So you like me?" he said with a scorn. "Apparently so does everyone I beat." Blackfire looked curious. "What?" she began. "Jinx. She can't stop staring at me and I don't like it. I beat you and now you like me. When will you get it through your head that I hold no interest in either of you? I would have thought that that would have been obvious when I showed no hesitation to hurt you. Hey, we all hurt each other," she said with a shrug and a smirk. "But it doesn't mean we can't be friends, or more. Come on, we're having a little get-together a little bit later on, and I bet you just love to party." Naruto got up and turned his back. "Not interested," he said solemnly. Suddenly Gizmo popped up next to Blackfire and looked up at her. "Could I come?" he asked. She grabbed him by the head and angrily threw him into a wall with a loud thud. "No. Leave me alone, you little freak." Ever since Naruto had arrived he had witnessed many of the same incident. Gizmo, it seemed, had a big thing for Blackfire. And no matter how many times she threw him away, hurt him, or did any other such thing to put him off, he still came back. Naruto thought it was pathetic. But then again, if he asked himself whether he would be the same if he was that much into another person, he had to admit that he probably would be. A voice sounded out over everyone's. "Of course not." It was Slade's voice. "Of course Shadow cannot make the party, he has an errand to run for me." Naruto stopped and turned around. He stood sideways and looked at the masked man with glaring eyes. I suggest that you get ready, young Shadow. You and a few other newcomers are going to undertake a little test. It's time we saw what you are made of. His voice was sinister, but truthful. Naruto heard no deceit in there, only snide arrogance. Naruto was stood in the middle of the hall with some other newbies. He knew little about who they were personally, but he did know the names and powers. There was Ivy. Ivy was a white-skinned teenage girl that had short dark purple hair that was spiked. She wore a dark purple dress that spread to her thighs and her eyes were pink. Her power was the ability to send purple vine-like tendrils out of her wrists and bind them around people and objects at her will. Another was Kanon. He was an android. He was mainly human with cybernetic implants. He had a giant cannon attached to his back that weighed him down so that he was permanently bowed. The final other one was a little girl named Rose. She was so small and sweet it was hard to remember that she was actually incredibly smart and strong in power. She was about 3 feet tall, wore a small pink dress and always held a teddy bear. Her power was being psychic. She had the most power out of all of them. With a snap of her finger she could send any of them hurtling into a wall with all their bones breaking. And of course, there was Naruto himself, currently going by the name of Shadow. Slade stood before them. He was pacing backwards and forwards in front of them. There is something I need, Slade said to them. And, fortunately, you need a test. As so I will be combining the two. Your test is to retrieve what I need. The one to bring me it will stay. The ones that don't, well, Slade narrowed his eye at them. I shall leave their fate to your imagination. Naruto could feel a little lump rise in tea. He fought desperately not to gulp and show his fear. The object I need is a ruby. It is the largest one in the world and is currently being held at the East Side Bank. Your task is to achieve it, by any means necessary. He emphasized these words while leaning dangerously close to Naruto's face. Naruto forced himself to not back off and merely to hold the stare. Go, Slade said, turning his back. They all ran out. Once topside, Naruto was worried. He had absolutely no idea where to. Heck, he barely knew what a bank was. Thankfully, the ants seemed to read his mind somehow, or at least knew the extent of his knowledge of this world, because their voices soon echoed in his ears from somewhere he didn't know. Don't worry, we'll guide you. It was Robin. You need to go in the opposite direction you're facing. Naruto didn't speak. He wanted to thank them for their help, but if he spoke, then the other newbies would notice. He jumped up onto the roof of the building next to him. He then began to run in the direction of the bank. Ivy appeared at his side. Kanon on the other. Rose next to him, floating in the air. Ivy attacked him. Naruto was shocked at first, but then he remembered Slade's words. Any means necessary. Plus he said that the ones that didn't bring him the ruby, well, he hadn't actually stated what would happen to them. But Naruto felt it wasn't going to be good. Ivy's purple vines rushed past him and he dodged over them. She attacked and attacked as they ran, and soon Naruto was dodging attacks from Kanon too. The brute tried to ram into him several times. When he tried it again, Naruto jumped up and Kanon collided with Ivy. Suddenly they all stopped moving. They were lifted up into the air by an unseen force and thrown across the long parking building lot they had landed on. Rose, it seemed, didn't want him to get the ruby. Naruto struggled to his feet and looked up at the little girl floating above him. She was chuckling. It wasn't some innocent little girl's laugh, no. It was a sinister amusement of other people's pain. Rose enjoyed tea. And tea she did. Naruto suddenly felt like he was being torn apart. He collapsed to the ground again as agony was wrenched throughout his entire body. He would have screamed, if he was able to. The pain was so great that Naruto couldn't find the voice to even Kanon and Ivy began to run in the direction of the bank. Rose noticed them and tried to stop them. She let her hold on Naruto go and turned to throw the others into a set of cars. Rose turned back to deal with Naruto, but he wasn't there. She tried to sense for him, but for some reason she couldn't find him. Suddenly she felt a spike of power behind her. Rose turned around quickly and was met with a blinding light. It hit her and tore agony through her body. She screamed and fell to the ground. Naruto landed with a scorching hand. It worked, he thought. Naruto's mind went back a few paces. He had managed to dodge into the shadows once she had stopped her hold on him. He was forced to ignore the pain in his body and focus on lowering his chakra. He didn't want her sensing him. He had climbed a lamppost and was waiting patiently until the time was right. Back at home, Naruto had begun some training with Kakashi. And Naruto, being the person he was, witnessed the lightning blade. And as predicted, Naruto was astonished at the attack's power. He had asked Kakashi to teach him the lightning blade, but Kakashi had first refused, saying that Naruto would be unable to wield it. The blonde-haired youth had protested and soon managed to convince his sensei to teach him. Night and day Naruto had worked, but he had been unable to use the attack up till now. Kakashi had even made a bet that Naruto wouldn't be able to do it for at least another month. Boy, if Kakashi could see him now. Naruto had managed to focus all his energy into the move. He had managed to overcome his pain, his worry of attacking a child, his fear it wouldn't work, and his need to conserve strength. Strangely, he had found it easier with all these hindrances than without. Thankfully, he hadn't killed the little girl. She was more than strong enough to be durable against the attack, and Naruto's power over the move had not been absolute. It had been far weaker than Kakashi's. Naruto's body felt like it had been just struck by a lightning bolt. His hair was full of static, as was his clothes. What Naruto didn't know was that the attack had shorted out the suit. The ants were now blind. Naruto looked up and saw the bank across the way. He charged. Naruto! Robin screamed at the screen. The ants had no idea what had happened, but whatever it was, it had shorted out the suit's systems. There was no audio, visual or thermal systems still operational. Raven was watching the screen as well, and as she watched the static that filled the screen, she spoke a single word: Naruto. Her voice was soft and full of concern. But Naruto was on his own. The inside of the bank was not something Naruto had expected. It was like a prison. Barred cages and high white walls surrounded him. He had no idea what a bank was used for, but he had a guess on where that ruby was being kept. After all, wasn't it usually behind the giant sealed door right in front of you? Naruto had no idea how strong the door was, but he doubted it could take the force of a Rasengan. Naruto was drained of most his energy. He was still in pain from what Rose had done to him, and he didn't know whether he would be able to form such a powerful Rasengan, but he had to try. Naruto concentrated and began to gather his chakra into his palm. Quickly he compacted the energy and began to gather it into a ball of power. He braced his body and felt its energy drain as he created the Rasengan sphere. Naruto quickly thrust the ball against the door and almost screamed as the energy was met with great resistance, causing the sphere to press against his hand. The Rasengan exploded and Naruto flew back several paces. He looked up at the door with a groan and saw a huge dent, lots of scorch marks and a single break in the armor not big enough to poke a finger through. Suddenly Naruto was hit on the back and was sent flying forwards into the large door. Kanon stood behind him with a large grin on his face. Naruto stood up and watched as Kanon began to charge up his weapon on his back. Naruto thought he could use this. Kanon fired. Naruto jumped. The blast hit the door and exploded with incredible force. Smoke enshrouded Naruto and he used this for cover whilst in the air. Naruto sent 3 shurikens forward. They all struck the weapon on Kanon's back, causing it to explode. Kanon was sent flying into the wall unconscious. Naruto looked at the door. It had a giant hole in it. That could have hurt, Naruto thought. Naruto looked inside and saw a pedestal at the back of the room. Inside was the largest ruby Naruto had ever seen, although it was technically the first ruby Naruto had ever seen. Below it, on the pedestal, there was an inscription. The Eagle's Eye, a time-honored gem that holds incredible properties of amplifying energy. Naruto hadn't the faintest idea what it meant, but he didn't really care at this moment. He see through the glass with a sharp shuriken and retrieved the giant red jewel. Suddenly it was yanked out of his hands by a purple vine. He went to grab it but was instantly whipped in the face, causing him to tumble to the ground. "You don't stay down, do you?" she said. Her voice was high-pitched and laced with malice. Naruto made to get up, but the vines suddenly wrapped around his body, holding him down. The vines began to slowly squeeze harder and harder. "Now I'll crush you," Ivy said with a smile. Naruto had to find a way out. He managed to hook the spike on the armor of his right elbow and hook it into the vine. From there, Naruto twisted and the vine broke. Ivy screamed in pain. The vines were a part of her. A strange white and creamy liquid leaked out of the wounded vine, probably a form of bee. Ivy's eyes narrowed in anger. Her vines seemed sharper now, as though they were able to actually see him. He'd need a blade of his own. Naruto had never been one to use any swords, but when he brought the tishma out from its sheath on his back, it felt right. Ivy essed him with her good vine and he essed it to knock it away. His sword see cleanly through the appendage as if it really were nothing but a plant. Ivy growled in pain and tried her best to ignore it. Naruto dived at her. Ivy wrapped her vines around his feet and threw him into a wall. Dust was flown everywhere and Ivy's view was obscured. Once the cloud of dust disappeared, Ivy was shocked to see what she saw. Naruto was gone. And so was the ruby. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.